Well, if you hadn't heard the news, Pelosi fell in Luxembourg. Also, Mitch McConnell took a fall too. Are we actually looking at the time where we have too old and too senile of a president, a big ranking member in the House, and then a senator? All three hold huge positions, and all three of them are pretty much too old to do their job. One thing I've learned as I get older, I can't do as much as I once did when I was younger. Well, that doesn't stop, and you add another 40, 50 years to myself, I don't know if I could do the things that I set out to do anyways. So therefore, are we to a point where this is the main reason why we need term limits? Now also, we're going to discuss something that Trump just did that was unthinkable. I actually like it because it shows time of peace. He just invited someone to his inauguration that made the world go crazy. We'll talk about that. Are we in a time where, for instance, kind of like the Occupy Wall Street movement, where people are taking this guy who tragically took the life of someone outside, the CEO of the United Healthcare? We need to talk about that story. And yes, there could be bad players on both sides, but we're now praising this guy. Not we, but a lot of the world is praising this guy. And I think this is going to be bad, and this is a moral consequence of where we've been. We're going to discuss that a little bit today too. And lastly, we're going to discuss a whistleblower that was found dead. Now, is that not a little peculiar that someone who, again, talks about something that should be voiced, whistleblows, says he has protection, because that's what a whistleblower gets. He gets protection, quote-unquote protection, then he ends up being dead. We're going to discuss that story and what company it's tied to, because it actually should scare the bejesus out of you. Let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome to The Max. Thank you so very much for being here. I'm humbled by being able to be in front of you each and every day, and I hope that the content that we share is beneficial to you. Now, today's stories, some are good. I mean, actually, the one about Trump, I think, is a really good positive move. Now, they'll spin it, the media spin it, and everybody else is going crazy over it, but I think it's a positive move if you're wanting peace. Now, we're also going to talk about some other stories that are just kind of hurt, and not because, well, let me say it like this. I don't think it's because they're necessarily bad. I think it's the consequences of where we were. And I think we're seeing that. And I think the ramifications of us living this kind of crazy life in America and living this kind of spoiled life, living this immoral life, we're starting to see where it got us. Let's discuss some of that today. So first, let's jump into the term limit situation with Congressman and Senate. Now, there was a congressman last week that said he wanted term limits. He was a Democrat liberal. He wanted term limits for Supreme Court justices. But at the same time, it's like he won't look in the mirror and say we need term limits for Congressmen and Senate. I honestly believe there should be term limits for everybody. Now, the years, the provocation of it, how long they're serving, all that can be debated. I think the presidency situation with 2 terms is fine. I think that justices can be debated and figured that out. But I think term limits for Congress and Senate is needed. Just this week, Nancy Pelosi falls on marble steps and messes herself up. I mean, messes her hip up. People that are over 75 and 80 that start having hip issues and fall, a lot of them have major consequences of that, not because of the hip, but because of all the other things that go along with it. So we see Nancy Pelosi falling, and now she's over in, I think, Luxembourg. And now that was after, a day after or 2 days after McConnell falling, just kind of missing his footing and falling. And man, have you seen him? I mean, he's got got a gash here and got messed up hands. Remember, they've already, I mean, Nancy looks like she's half drunk every time, but McConnell, there's been times where he's kind of stumbled over his words and kind of froze and paused. What we're seeing is a sign that we need term limits. These people need to be out of office. And to be honest with you, I'm going to blow your mind. I hope McConnell does not get out right now. We missed our opportunity to primary him and get him out before. Because guess what? If he walks out now, guess who appoints the new one without a special election? He's into a point where I don't think it's made enough time to where a special election happens. The governor appoints him. Well, the governor of Kentucky is a liberal who has no values such as Rand Paul or Thomas Massie or really the people of Kentucky. So I don't know. I hope that McConnell can hang on. But to be honest with you, we wouldn't put ourselves in this predicament if we would not allow for sometimes elder people to run for these positions. It's amazing we put an age limit on when people can serve, 30, 35, 40, whatever it may be, in certain capacities of elected officials. Like a president has to be a certain age. Why can't we do that on the high end too? Well, they can't be over this age. Look, I love elder people. I love my grandparents. I don't have any grandparents left, but I love grandparents. I love that age people. But guess what? They're not as sharp as they once were. So we're the world's, city on a hill. We're the one that everybody wants to be like. We're the ones that everybody wants to attack and adversaries don't like. Why do we put the most senile of our generations over us? Makes no sense. Now, I kind of blame some of these states because you keep electing these people. I've told you time and time again, we keep electing the people and hoping they're going to do something different. If they've been a failure for 20 or 30 years, do you think they're going to be better next 4 years? Come on. So it's time to elect better people and be more wiser. This also comes down to our presidency. Now, yes, we have a new president coming in. We had a president for 4 years who is completely senile, the same way. He had good days and bad. Well, that showed signs of weakness, and that's why we have the conflicts that we have today. So let this be a sign for most Americans to not just say we need term limits. Forget term limits. They're not going to pass them. But what can happen is you just vote for the right people. If someone's been in office for 20 or 30 years, why do you keep wanting them to get there if they've not done anything for you? You keep saying they're going to do something for you, but that's pretty stupid. Please, quit worrying about term limits and start electing people who actually represent you. Now, I'm not from Kentucky. I'm from Mississippi. But I look at Rand Paul. I look at Thomas Massey, two phenomenal people picked for the national level. I'm not picking on Kentucky, but I'm looking at your governor and I'm looking at McConnell and I'm like, how do the same people that vote for Rand Paul and Thomas Massey vote for these two guys? It's baffling. So this goes along with every state. Every state has this. I have a senator that he needs to go too. Just because he's not as old, but he has been in Washington for a long time. He's the establishment. We just need to say, look, don't worry about term limits because they're not going to pass that on unless they do something like a grandfather clause like I mentioned in a video past. But until that point, we need to make sure that we primary them with good people and don't worry about the politics behind it. Don't worry about the establishment behind it and start a grassroots campaign to get better people elected. Then you probably wouldn't have 85-year-olds in Luxembourg that's supposed to be serving us, but instead she's laid up in a hospital bed because she falls. Now, can anybody fall? Yep. Look, man, I broke my ankle messing with some pigs. But here's the difference. They're old. And this is going to happen. And it's going to keep on happening because our average age of our senator in Congress is as old as it's ever been. The average age is older than it's ever been in Washington right now. From all previous years. Now, that shows we need some change. Now let's jump into the next story about Trump. Trump does the unthinkable. He invites Xi to the inauguration. Now, for most people, they thought, oh my gosh, I can't believe he did that. And then, of course, the liberals are saying, oh, he's just been bought out by him. No, I think it's way more than that. And I actually like what Trump's doing. I think it's showing a new time in America. I think it's showing a new leadership in the world. That even though we don't get along about everything, we learn to work together. You ever heard the saying, it's an old cliche statement, you keep your friends close, but you keep your enemies closer. Well, I think that's exactly what he's doing. It's not that he doesn't like Xi, but he knows there's going to be some tough negotiations coming. Well, if a sign of respect is showing, look, I want you to come and be at my inauguration. I want you to be a special guest. However, we're going to have some hard discussions. So I do want us to work as friends towards this, and I want us to show in solidarity that we're trying to make a peaceful world. Now, that's a lot different from what Biden is doing by sending aircrafts over to China. And that's a lot different than what we're doing than putting NATO money over in Ukraine. But again, Trump is not president yet. I would love to see, just like him talking about peace in Ukraine and Russia, I would love to see him have peace in the Taiwan Strait. But both of those situations are none of our business. But what I do think we should do is do just what Trump is doing. Thinking outside the box. Quit worrying about working on back channels. Quit worrying about trying to work through the media. And you call these guys up and you say, look, we're not going to get along all the time. But we can make a stronger, easier, more peaceful world. And we can work together and have the best trade and make sure all our populations are better. Now, will there be bad players like Iran or somewhere in the Middle East causing dust-ups or wherever it may be in the world? Yes. But then we work together and we say, okay, we all are in agreement this person should not be trying to cause problems across the world. Let's handle the situation and let's keep peace. I think this is a sign of peace. I think this is a good thing. Now, when we speak biblically and we talk end times and all that, there's a lot that's going to take place. And we know that we're not going to have good relations with China or Russia. But there should be a time of peace, and there should be a time that we are thankful and hopeful that we can live maybe with a better economy, maybe without having to worry about drones flying over, keeping us from biological warfare or whatever it may be, or someone nuking us. There should be a time that we have peace. We work hard as Americans, and the last thing I want us to do is always stress out about someone bombing us or someone in conflict. So I think this is a good move. Now, this is what I think we've got to do. The politicians that I was just talking about, most of them are the ones that start these scuffles and these conflicts because they get back-end deals. We stop all that. We cut the lobbying out. We cut the insider trading. We cut the monies flowing underneath the table. I believe you'd see a lot of peace. And I think this is a good sign of what Trump is doing. He's doing the unthinkable, bringing someone who we would consider a quote-unquote enemy, or at least an adversary, that is having some scuffles with trade and having some scuffles with Taiwan. And he's saying, hey, I want to invite you. Now, will Xi come? I don't know. But I think it makes a good sign that Trump is saying, look, it's a new time, a new time, a new time. And we're going to try to have peace. I think it's a good deal. Now, thirdly, this is what I was talking about with the consequences. I think that we've alienated people so bad through if they make a lot of money and being successful, or if they're not making a lot of money, we tend to judge those. We tend to say, instead of learning and trying to be better, like me, I love listening to podcasts from people that have done well. I listen to a lot of PBD, Patrick Bet David. I listen to a lot of manhood and being a better man. Of course, I listen to my messages with Christian-based connotations, of course. But one thing I've learned is if I want to be better and do better, I want to try to get there the honest way, and I want to try to learn from some of these people that have done it already. What we've done in our culture, though, is we've built a us versus them mentality, and I blame politics, I blame media, and what it's done is it's caused a chasm. Now, what I'm pertaining to is the CEO that was shot last week. Now, this gentleman that was waiting is now, he murdered the guy. Do I believe that any healthcare agency should be making hundreds of billions of dollars a year and declining coverage from all the money that people are paying, especially when they're sick? No. That is wrong. That's the wrong way of doing business. That's not success. However, they need to fix that problem. Their business does. The government needs to make a competition. The government needs to have stipulations on if you're going to practice on state levels and you're going to practice on national levels, that you need to adhere to what you said you're going to do. Insurance is such a ripoff to me. It's such a Ponzi. But anyways, I digress. Now, on the other side, this guy is not a hero. This guy is a murderer. We have to admit that. Now, what's happening is a lot of people in the I compare it to Occupy Wall Street, a lot of people in the outside fringes, the extreme left, are putting him up at rock concerts. They're hiring him and giving him money, and they're doing all this stuff and making him out to be some kind of hero. He's not a hero. But what we've done is we've polarized and alienated over financial, over economics, over whatever it may be, over politics, that we have put people against people. Now, that's what this election did the last 8 years, and almost really the last 12 years since we've seen Trump be on the ballot. We've seen alienation from the legacy media. We've seen alienation from newspapers. We've seen politicians play very dirty with rhetoric. And now all of a sudden, when something like this takes place, the guy literally was gunned down in the middle of the road, and all he was doing was going to a meeting. Now, there's some shady stuff they said about the guy. Yeah, it could be. But the thing is, we can't learn to be vigilantes, and we can't learn to try to do this as righteous justice, because it's not right. We cannot make this guy a hero. And that is exactly what some of the fringe left is doing. What we're doing is we're living out the consequences of bad leadership, of bad policy, of not having the right regulations in, and now living in a very immoral way in America. We've got to fix that. This guy's no hero. On the other side, I hate it for the guy because he's got a wife and kids. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. There's a lot of stories of him. But the bottom line is, it's a sad situation that the consequences of immoral living, and the consequences of the way that we've just kind of said there's no such thing as morals and goods, and the consequences of really bad policies for so long with insurance or with colleges has caused this to take place. So, just my opinion, we've got to get back to a moral compass. We have to get back to what it means to actually be good and bad, good and evil, what it actually means again. Because what we've done for so long is we've just said relativism. Oh, well, whatever's relative to you is good. Whatever you believe is good. And that is incorrect. And now we have a situation now where we could have another Occupy Wall Street movement, or another situation where the fringe left literally makes this as a righteous situation, and it's not. Whew, that's a hard subject, and that's a hard story, because there could be bad players on both sides. But we cannot make this guy out to be a hero. Now let's dive into a story that's pretty serious. I want you to pay attention, because not just because of the whistleblower, but what was he whistleblowing against, and what company was he whistleblowing against, and that should open your eyes. So, OpenAI, artificial intelligence, whistleblower found dead, ethical questions raised. The guy's name was Sridhar Balaji, a former AI researcher who had accused the company of violating copyright laws, was found dead in a San Francisco apartment. The incident occurred on November 26, and while preliminary reports suggest self-inflicted, like most of these situations are, but officials have actually not disclosed that as the cause of death. The event had sparked discussions regarding the safety and ethical practices within the tech industry concerning whistleblowers. I just think it's weird that we see whistleblowers like this one, we see whistleblowers like Snowden, we see whistleblowers like the guy with Boeing. All these whistleblowers should have protection, because again, they're talking about bad things that happen within their companies. And this one, to me, is pretty serious, because it deals with AI. Did you know that most of these whistleblowers all have contracts with the government? Think of AI, the artificial intelligence. Think of Boeing. Think of Snowden and his situation with the national security. What I'm saying is there's a lot to some of these whistleblowers, and I think this is why you can't find people to speak out, because all of a sudden they're going to get, self-inflicted, basically. That's what they're scared of. And I think what we've got to do is if we have someone that's willing to tell us truth, there should be protections placed in. And if there's not, then you'll never have people come out and actually talk about some of the dirty things that are happening behind the doors of some of these companies, and some of these companies who are getting subsidies and money from us as taxpayers. So I think this is a big deal. Now, did this guy end up doing something self-inflicted to himself? Possibly. But when that happens, why do people come out and whistleblow and try to start a kerfuffle and then all of a sudden do this? When someone is doing a whistleblowing situation, they're talking about the bad actions. What they're trying to do is change policy. And when you become a quote-unquote whistleblower, what happens is you're trying to keep your job while you're talking about this. Well, if you're trying to keep your job, why would you do something self-inflicted to yourself just a few days later after you whistleblew? Just something to think about. If people are doing bad things, then if you're willing to tell about those bad things, sometimes those bad things may catch up with you. So I think that you have to be very careful. I think there should be better protections in. If someone's willing to be a whistleblower, it's almost like witness protection. Something needs to go in place where there is some safety protocol there. Because if someone is doing something wrong and then someone brings it out, those people that are doing something wrong are going to do all they can to make sure that that person doesn't speak or testify. Now, does that mean every one of these guys are going to self-inflict themselves? I don't know. I think it's just a little coincidental. Give me your thoughts on that story. I don't know if a lot of people have heard that, but I mean, this guy was a whistleblower for OpenAI. Talked about some of the practical and impractical things they were doing and things they were doing wrong with law breaking, and all of a sudden he ends up gone. I don't know, something to think about. Let me know your thoughts on this video with even Trump, with Xi. Is this a good move, bad move? There's been conservatives on both sides saying this is good or bad. I want to know your opinion. Also, give me your thoughts on some of the other stories that we talked about. I mean, we're not going to get term limits. As much as we want them, you're not going to get them. So therefore, what's your thoughts on making sure that you have the right people on the state level picking the people? Meaning, you have to primary. I mean, can we get wisdom and understand who we're voting for? That might be the best thing to do. Guys, thank you again so very much for watching. Please, if you like this content, go down here, press subscribe. Our goal is to talk about the news and make sure we always show God through it, show hope through it, and learn how to prepare through it and be more sustainable. Guys, thank you for watching. God bless.